Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be watching and listening to Rousseau performing Chopin's Nocturne Opus 9 No. 2 in E flat. Now this is a wonderful opportunity to really learn a lot about piano playing because there are many things that Rousseau does that are typical of amateur pianists, and maybe some of you are at the point in your piano journey where you notice, okay, I've got the notes down, I can play the piece, all the rhythms are right, but there just seems to be something missing, that extra little something. When I listen to professionals play, it sounds different, but I'm not sure what it is. This performance is a little bit like that. All the notes are right, all the rhythms are right. He's doing most of those things just fine, but it's missing that extra little pizzazz, and I want to try and dive into that today and show you what some of the things are that could be just a bit better, and maybe talk about some of the things that he does good as well. So let's go ahead and jump in. Here we go. Okay, so already in that first phrase, there's an awful lot to talk about. The first thing that really occurs to me, the first thing that just sort of jumps out at me when I hear this performance, is that there isn't enough differentiation between the notes. Now, what I like to tell my students, in piano music and really in Western music in general, we often have three levels. We have the melody on the top, we have the bass on the bottom, and we have the harmony in the middle. Now, of course, there are exceptions to that. Sometimes the melody's on the bottom, maybe the melody's in the middle in some places. But in general, we have this sort of a texture. And when you look at this piece at first glance, of course, it's obvious. We have the melody on the top. We have the left hand, but the left hand has to be divided into bass and harmony. And what we have here are these deep bass notes, and then afterwards, these chords. Now, Rousseau lets the chords really overpower the melody. They're just too loud in the middle. When you have these three levels, what you really have to do is you have to be sure that the melody is in place number one. The bass can also be emphasized, but whatever's in the middle has to be really, really in the background. And we especially have to be careful that it doesn't conflict with or cover up the melody. So to give you an example of what I'm talking about here, if I were to play like this, listen to how these notes in the middle, these ones, really cover up the melody on the top. And what I need to do instead is emphasize my melody, emphasize my bass, but keep the chords in the middle much in the background, like this. Soft, soft. And that's something that Rousseau kind of does throughout this piece. There's just too much heaviness in the middle, and it covers up the melody. Now, if you think about it, we have, for the most part, single notes up here, like a human voice. The voice can only sing one note at a time, right? We also have single notes in the deep voice, in the bass, but in the middle, we have all of these notes. So, of course, if I'm playing 3, 4, 5 notes in the middle, those are easily going to cover up my melody, and I have to be really careful of that. Now, the other thing that we can talk about in this first phrase is the way that Rousseau, or I should say the way that he doesn't resolve the notes according to their harmonic needs. So let's take this very first phrase. Listen to the melody. This F here needs to resolve down to E flat. And you'll hear a lot of places in this piece in his playing, he makes a really sort of a cardinal sin in piano playing where he emphasizes the second note here, kind of out of nowhere, and he's not really hearing the connection between the notes, like here to here. So the F leading to the E flat, and now a new phrase. And another thing that I think is really, really important, especially in Chopin, is feeling the tension when you have big leaps. So something like here, feeling the tension between that C and C, just as if you were singing it. It takes a lot of energy to get up there. And sometimes he just sort of mechanically goes up from one note to the next, and that tension between the notes is somewhat missing. Let's continue on. Okay, so first of all, one of the things that I think he does really nice, when he gets to the trills, he starts them slowly and kind of leads into a faster trill, and he comes out of it very cleanly as well. Very nice trilling there. Now, what could be a bit better is his sense of rubato. This all for me kind of it's a bit stiff. It's just like it's a bit plodding. This music, it needs a bit more freedom. And again, the resolution here. He again tends to hammer these notes that should really resolve. The trill, like I said, very nice, and this is okay. And here, again, resolving. And what we hear in his recording is coming onto that C in the right hand, really out of nowhere. Now, this spot, Chopin writes dots underneath a legato line. And what that means is it has to be very sort of tender, very kind of ethereal and not heavy. And Rousseau tends to plod through these notes a bit also. That could be a bit lighter, a bit freer. Let's continue on. Yeah, there's a lot to say there. Unfortunately, not much of it good. We have this, and coming from the F, this needs to resolve. Again, we have just hammering on the C again, and here, he really emphasizes this bass note, but it's not in keeping with the Chopin style. This is a very tender spot, and the bass note, he writes pianissimo. It has to be, it needs some time, it needs to be very tender. And the switch to the minor chord here. First one, an A flat major chord, and then there's just such a world of difference in this harmony. And I wish that he would feel that a bit better. In general, I wish that he would just sort of feel the harmonies a little bit more attention to what's going on, not just on the page, but what's going on harmonically. There's a good example of that coming up. Listen to this. Again, the notes in the middle here, much too loud. Covering up the melody. Okay, so here, like I was mentioning, when we have this forte here, the forte comes from the bass and the melody, but the notes in the middle still need to be soft. Otherwise, all of these notes, they just completely cover up what's going on up on the top. And then we get to this interesting spot. We conclude the phrase, and then these beautiful harmonies. I think he needs to feel the harmonies there more, and more on the upper voice. Hear how that melody sings out. And these chords, they're sort of flat when he plays them. They're kind of all the notes sort of at the same volume, all the same level. And I'm talking about it within the chord. We need to have more on the very tops of the chord so that we hear the melody as opposed to this. I'm exaggerating a bit, of course, so you can hear it, but that's the idea. When you have chords in piano playing, most of the time you want to emphasize the top notes of those chords so that the melody really sings out. Let's continue on. Again, no resolution there. And here, I think on these phrases he could just move a bit more. And then resolving and getting a bit slower. This is a basic principle of what we call tempo rubato, and it's used all the time in Chopin's music. You take time, you give time, it has to sort of even out. And when the phrase moves, when there's more going on, that's a place where you can move forward, and then when the phrase sort of concludes, you go back, you relax the time a bit. So again, here, moving forward and back. And if this is missing, especially in Chopin's music, it starts to sound very, very plodding. Everything just too much the same. Again, I'm exaggerating for effect, but you hear the difference, right? Okay, let's continue on. But again, very nice trills. He does a great job with those trills, really starting them slowly and leading well into the next notes. And another thing that I would say, to his benefit, he plays very cleanly. He doesn't miss many, if any, notes, and on these passages, we really hear every single note. It's very clean. The sense of rubato, the sense of time could be a bit better. We'll talk about that perhaps a little bit, but in general, very, very clean playing, very nice. Yeah, for me, after we finish this phrase, we have something new starting, and it would be nice to have a new color here. But just taking a little bit of time, maybe going back with the dynamic, and a little bit more sensitivity to what's going on, what's happening in the harmonies there would really help to give this music a little bit extra sort of color. And he's doing the forte, but again, too much with the middle voices, so it just kind of covers up everything else. We want to really sing that melody up on top. We need to have a soloist, so to speak, in this piece. It's a bit too plodding, right? It's just kind of the same. There isn't enough rubato, enough flexibility with the tempo through all of this. And again, this is a spot where Chopin writes the dots with the slur over them. It has to be a bit more tender, not so kind of aggressive into the keys. And going on. Here, I'd also really like to hear a different color. We're switching to A flat minor, suddenly that interesting harmony. Here, Chopin writes pianissimo. We have the same sort of phrase one time, and then, so we have this phrase. Chopin writes piano here, and then we have a variation of that phrase, pianissimo. And it would be really, really great if we could hear more of a direct sort of this color and then that color, sort of an echo effect, and it's just too flat. Maybe it has something to do also with the software instrument that he's using, I don't know, but at any rate, there needs to be more color in this music. Yeah, and this right here, I kind of have a big problem with. Chopin writes sempre pianissimo, always pianissimo, very, very quietly, and he writes dolcissimo, very sweetly, very tenderly, and instead we get this, almost like it's a big climax of the piece. It's like this. It has to be very soft, very tender, and more care and attention given to the nuances in this music. Yeah, number one, this is written piano. Again, it's just too loud. It's also, for my taste, too mechanical, Something like this, more freedom in these notes, not just da 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 da. It doesn't fit with Chopin. It's great if you're playing Bach, right? Then you can do that, but not in Chopin. Chopin needs more nuance. Let's continue on. Yeah, so we talked just a moment ago about taking time, giving time, taking time, this idea of tempo rubato. Chopin actually writes here in this sort of like a climax section, he writes stretto, which if you don't know what it means moving forward, sort of rushing a bit. And then after that, we get the slowing down, where he writes senza tempo, so really out of time. There needs to be more flexibility here in the tempo, and it's just too matter of fact. It stays the same. So after this, I would like to move it more and arriving taking some time. All right, let's continue on. So it's a very, interesting idea that Chopin has at the end here. He comes up with these things. You think, where in the world did he come up with this beautiful ending here? And Rousseau does it okay. Again, though, I'd like to see more nuance. What I would like to see is starting slower. This is, Chopin loved to improvise. This is very much like an improvised passage, starting slower and getting faster. And then at the end, a bit more rubato. And also, in the last two measures, when Rousseau plays this, what he does is in the middle of the measure, he kind of slows down and restarts. If you look at what's going on harmonically, if you look at what's going on musically, there's nothing happening there. It's all the same harmony. So it would be better to save the ritardando for the end. When you don't have so much going on, that's a place to move forward. So, another example from Chopin would be like this. Not much happening in the left hand, so we move forward, it changes, and then we move forward. That's kind of a general principle in piano playing. So here, with rubato, with the tempo, no reason to stop in the middle of that measure. This is fine, and then the ending, of course, pretty straightforward. So, he's got the notes down, he's got the rhythms down, he plays very cleanly, he doesn't make any mistakes in terms of the notes, but what could be a bit better is the layering of the different levels in this music, the different layers, so the melody, the bass, the stuff in the middle, and a bit more nuance and attention to rubato. And what I love to do, actually, I think this would be great for Rousseau, is to play along with some world-class pianists, like, for example, Arthur Rubinstein or Vladimir Horowitz, just to feel what they do with the tempo. These things in Chopin, they're very subtle. They're not always easy to communicate. They're not always easy to learn for that reason. But sometimes playing along with a recording, as long as it's a really, really great pianist, can really help you with that. So thanks for listening. I hope this video has been helpful. I hope you've learned a little bit about tempo, about rubato, about colors and nuance in the music of Chopin. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.